Hello, ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to arguably by far the most requested video on the channel, the Bruiser guide for Season 10 in New World. Now, I was waiting honestly for a while in order to release this video, and the main reason for that is a lot has changed, going from Season 9 to Season 10, and I wanted to play a couple of wars first before making the video and talking about it. Let's just firstly talk about the artifacts that you want to be running as a bruiser in Season 10. Now, there are arguably three options, with one of them being the focus of this video. I'll be focusing around the djinn head wrap in this particular video, but an alternative option is also tumbler feet wraps, or there is even some talks about the unyielding helmet being potentially useful as well. However, I do believe djinn head wrap right now with 5 invigorated is the way to go, and I will talk more about it in just a second. But just to make it very clear, this video is going to heavily focus about the djinn head wrap and not so much about the other variations of the bruiser, because I currently believe that this is the best way to play bruiser in Season 10. Oh, and also I will not be focusing on all the possible infixes that you can receive as a bruiser, because first of all, it is simply not feasible to make a guide where I focus on the infixes that you can get on your gear pieces and all of those things, because quite honestly, I don't even know what is the best thing to use right now. The only one we'll be focusing on is the Great Ring, because that is the realistic thing to strive towards. But obviously, if you do get any great infixes on your armor pieces, on your jewelry, whatever, do consider using it, make your own judgment, and incorporate it into your build. Now, another thing that this account does not have at the moment is the Endless Thirst. If you have the Endless Thirst, absolutely use it. This is my Warring alt account, and I'm using this Quadroll earring, which by the way has very good perks on, without a gem unfortunately, but a Quadroll earring regardless, and definitely replace this with the Endless Thirst, and I'll talk to you more about this in just a second. And another very key factor about the bruiser in Season 10 is the fact that you want to farm yourself the Unstoppable ring in order to get grit on the start of your melee attacks, whether it's the light or the full heavy. What I mean by that is if I click, I'm gritted. If I full heavy, I'm gritted all the way throughout. And the only way you're gonna accomplish this right now is by gaining grit on melee heavy attacks and during the melee light up start attacks by having the Unstoppable prefix. Now, keep in mind, you can totally play the bruiser without having this, but this just puts you one step above. Like, this just makes you honestly really strong. And as you can see, this ring is nothing great. I mean, what? We got a strike damage, fire damage being completely useless, with an offense and a skill socket. So this is arguably very bad ring, but it's still better than all the other options for me at the moment. Just wanted to have these out of the way, so we're focusing on having Endless Thirsts, Grit Ring, and djinn head wrap. We currently are not using any artifacts when it comes to weapons, so with that being said, let's jump right into it. I want to start this guide a little bit different to how I do other guides. I've seen way too much confusion when it comes to weight distribution, honestly more than I would like to see, because a lot of people are returning to the game. So if you're not sure whether you want to play the djinn head wrap route or you want to play the tumbler feet wraps route, if you loot bias these exact items, it will work for both builds. So what do I mean by that? Medium head, heavy body, light gloves, heavy legs, light feet. That's what you need in order to cover both tumbler builds and the djinn builds. And when I say loot bias, every time you're running around the game, you will be heavily obtaining drops based on the gear you're wearing. A lot of people do not know that. So if you're wearing heavy body, you will be receiving heavy bodies from chests, from loot rewards, whatever it is. If you're wearing light gloves, you'll be receiving light gloves throughout just about any piece of content you're doing. So make sure you're equipping this before you're doing any sort of chest runs, any sort of opening chests from OPR caches, anything like that. Keep that in mind. Alright, now that this is out of the way, let's talk about the most important perks on a bruiser in Season 10. It is going to be Shirking Fortification. You want Shirking Fortification on every single piece, paired with preferably a gem socket and paired with one of the good conditionings. So, let's very quickly talk about what are considered good conditionings, what are considered bad conditionings. Good conditionings are, well, there's a lot of them right now. Slash is great, strike conditioning is great, flame conditioning, amazing, arcane conditioning, phenomenal, thrust conditioning, a little bit worse, still very good, and then you have those bad conditionings being the nature conditioning, that's pretty bad, frost conditioning, that's pretty bad, and void conditioning, that's maybe not so bad. It's more in line with like Thrust. So Thrust and Void is slightly, I would say, B tier conditionings. Then Frost and Nature are just low tier conditionings. And everything else would be S tier conditionings, including, I think I didn't mention the lightning conditioning or shock conditioning as it's called. Those are really good nowadays, helps you against Mjolnir, helps you against bows, so keep that in mind. So how would a good piece look? You would have a shirking, you would have conditionings, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky, you would have a gem socket, and then you would have defensive slots. Or offensive slots, but defensive slots are a little bit better as a bruiser than offensive slots. Let's go into why that is the case. This piece of armor, in my opinion, is extremely good, and it's very simple. Now, it's not this, because I would want multiple conditionings, but it's very solid. If I click on it and I click attach charms, I can go ahead and pick double defensive charms with a gem socket. Keep in mind, with the gem sockets, you can put punishing gems in order to deal even more melee damage, but I'll go over this a little bit later. And in the defensive sockets, you want to be putting 5 invigorated, that is your top build when you're playing the Djinn head rep. You want to have 1 time keenly fortified, that's going to be extremely important, and then you want to have 3, 4 or 5 freedom, depending on your preference. I'm playing 3 freedoms on this build, but I have tried 5 freedom on a different build. Maybe it's placebo, maybe it is not, but I really liked 5 freedom, personally. However, this build is 3 freedom, and then all the bonus defensive perks, you can put either Enchanted Ward or Elemental Aversion on those. I personally put Enchanted Ward, I prefer it over Elemental Aversion, but do keep in mind that that is an option. And now you may be wondering, what about the offensive slots? For example, we have an offensive slot over here. All your offensive slots should be occupied by penetrating backstab at the moment. So now you know what to put in your defense slots, what you put in your gem sockets. I have a lot of opals here. Obviously, you want to have some onyxes or malachites or diamonds, whatever. You want to spread this a little bit nicer than I have. I've just thrown in what I had because I'm changing gear all the time. But do keep in mind the gem sockets should be occupied by a punishing rune glass, whether it's a punishing elemental ward, punishing onyx, punishing something else, it doesn't matter, it's gonna give you that extra bit of melee damage. The reason why these weren't used in the past is because these would give you less defenses than these. But if you read, this gives me 2% damage absorption in elemental, and this gives me 2% damage absorption in elemental. So in Season 10, all of your best in slot pieces should be in casings. Another example of an interesting piece is this shattered breastplate that I have going onto my body. It has shirking, it has double conditioning, double S tier conditioning in my opinion. We have slash, we have lightning damage absorption, and we have slash damage absorption. However, this one doesn't have a gem slot, but it did have double defensive slot. So I was able to put both freedom and enchanted ward into this one, just for an example. So not to always insta salvage something, because you might end up using it. Now keep in mind, this will be replaced by a catacomb elementally charged breastplate that lands on vital synergy. I have that on 2 out of 4 accounts right now. I just gotta farm more catacombs. Moving on to the next piece, what do we have right here? This is a bad piece. Why is this a bad piece, you may be wondering? We do not have shirting fortification. What do we have, however? We have a gem, we have a skill. The reason I have this is because I needed a skill socket, funnily enough. And we have 2 good conditionings with Lifestealer's Draught. I do think Lifestealer's Draught is pretty interesting, but maybe not as good as I originally thought, so this is a sort of item that I will be replacing. Moving down to legs, we got the Shirking Fortification slash conditioning again with the gem slot, the double defense, very good. Moving down, we have a Shirking Fortification slash conditioning with the defense, with the offense, with the gem slot. Another good piece, in my opinion. Do keep in mind that when it comes to the gear at the moment, faction gear is actually quite good. Faction gear is gonna give you the sacrificial empowerment, which is gonna give you bonus damage, but it's also gonna give you shirking fortification on every piece, and some of those pieces are very good. For example, I believe the legs are fairly decent and the body is fairly decent from the faction store if you do not want to be grinding catacombs, just as an idea there. But now let's go ahead and move over to the weapons. This is where you really have a lot of options, and I will tell you what I personally think is best in slot. And let's start off with a Great Axe. We have a great example of a good Great Axe here, not bis, but good. We have a gem socket, very important. Every single weapon needs a gem socket, and then we have End on a Great Axe. End is one of the bis perks. In this case, I have a attunement, which is great, and I have a shirking, which is slightly below great. But all of these paired together are extremely good. What would be better than this would be End attunement and another attunement, for example, or maybe even End attunement and warding strikes. I could see that being even better, for example. Obviously, with the gem slot, and this one has a defense, so we're running it. If it has a skill socket, even better. If it has, because you can put Maelstrom, for example, on it. However, if a lot of people are playing in Vig, then maybe Maelstrom is not that good of a perk all of a sudden. And when it comes to the Warhammer, it is a very similar idea. This is not a great Warhammer at all. It's a very cheap one, and it will be replaced with this one, which is a better one that I have right here. So, for example, this one has an attunement, Warding Strikes, Shirking, with a gem, with a skill. So you want to either put a Sundering Destiny in this, or you want to put a Sundering Shockwave in this. So this is an example of a hammer that is definitely going to replace this one. Now, in theory, what would also be a good hammer is double skill, gem socket, and then 2 good perks, whether it's attunement, whether it's warning strikes, something that you can like actually use. There's like so many different drops that you can get that are good. Here are some examples. Here we have attunement warning strikes, that's fine. You could have trenchant strike attunement, that would be great. You could have attunement counter shirking, that would be alright. You can have something like end with stuff, that could be alright. You could have something like trenchant strikes, multi-shirkings, multi-attunements, whatever it is. You got a lot of options when it comes to weapons. In these weapons, we are putting a very specific gem in, and it is Cut Pristine Turquoise, I believe. And this one actually gives you armor penetration. So what we do with that, we stack it with the pieces like Penetrating Backstab, and whenever somebody turns your back against you, you're going to be dealing very, very big damage. And that happens a lot of the times in wars because people use the free-form movement, which allows you to run in this sort of direction. So then when they dodge, they're giving you your back. And when they're giving you your back, you're slapping them with the Penetrating Backstab, which penetrates their armor. Plus, you have bonus armor penetration on your weapons. And all in all, it just works really well. Now, let's talk about must-have skill perks on a Bruiser. Every single Bruiser needs to have Intangible Charge somewhere on their build. I have it on my amulet. Intangible Charge makes it so you can charge through everything but the ice wall. Okay, so keep that in mind. You can literally charge through everything, and it's extremely good. You also need to have a Gravity Well perk. I have it over here on the gloves. I'll have to eventually replace this, but Insatiable Gravity Well, you want these on armor, okay? You don't want these on weapon. Even though weapon makes the perks better, these two are completely fine on armor. I guess if you have a skill socket on your weapon, you might as well put it there. Alright, and now let's talk about the more complex situations, and that is the amulet, or the jewelry rather. No longer we are playing Ankh. Ankh is bad. Why is Ankh bad? You cannot stack multiple protections. Why do you want to stack multiple protections? This is literally going to keep you alive. What are S tier protections, you may wonder? It is Slash Protection, Strike Protection, Flame Protection, Arcane Protection, and then going a little bit down would be Thrust Protection, maybe even Void Protection, and then going further down would be Nature Protection and Frost Protection. The S tier protection would also be the Lightning Protection. There is a lot of protections, just think about it. If it has multiple protections, it's probably good. Well-being, it's also really good, and obviously if you have gem sockets, is great. If you don't, it is what it is. My ideal amulet would consist of Slash Protection, Strike Protection, and Arcane Protection. And Well-being, and then I would wake up. But you know what I mean. You want to have as many protections as possible. That's why we're moving away from Ankh, and we're moving on to Endless Thirst. We don't have Endless Thirst in this case, but we have a quad roll, really good earring, being Regenerating, Refreshing Toast, Refreshing Recovery, which by the way is a super good perk in this patch, because whenever your health drops below 50, you can double charge, you can double shock, you can do so many things and really get out of bad situations. So this Refreshing Recovery perk, super good if you have it. And then, as we went over the ring earlier, getting the Grit Ring is super important as well, with as many great perks as you can. But good perks would consist of Strike Damage, Slash Damage. Then you have perks like Auto Attacks dealing bonus damage. You have perks like Spells dealing bonus damage. You have to figure it out for yourself here, but definitely do be hunting for these Unstoppable Rings. I believe you can get them either from raids or from PvP Trek. I think I got it from PvP Trek. I could be wrong. I don't think I did raids on this account, it's my Warring alt account, just keep that in mind. So this Unstoppable is super important when it comes to jewelry. Alright, now let's go ahead and move over to consumables. This is gonna be a little bit easier to explain. You're starting all of your PvP activities by using the Honing Stone. Follow that up with your food buff of your choice, whether you're using the Roasted Rabbit with seasoned veggies that gives you 48 con, or you're using the Springtide Crumble that gives you 52 con and is way too expensive. I have one of these because when I'm playing arenas or CTF, I can use it and it gives me 52 instead of 48 con. Keep that in mind. And then you finish it off by using the Desert Sunrise, which is going to reduce your dot effects as well. Now, when it comes over to your consumables on your bar, you have a couple of options actually in this patch. You're gonna see a very weird potion here that a lot of people do not use. Infused Grit Potion, in my opinion, is a must-have potion if you do not have the Unstoppable Ring. In my case, I have Unstoppable Ring, so we are gonna be replacing this with Mana Pot right now for the Fortifying Toast. But if we were using the Endless Thirst, we would probably be replacing that with a Regenerating Potion. Because you can stack regenerating serums with regenerating potions with the cooldown of the Endless Thirst, or if you want, you can also use it, the serum, with the health potion. You have so many options that I recommend you that you figure out what works for you. There's also an infused burst regen potion that you can try to mix and match in. I've personally never played with the Endless Thirst because the rotation hasn't been there yet, so I don't actually know what is the best combo. But if you want to be safe and you don't have a Grit Ring, you just put a Grit Potion there, you have a serum, you have a cleansing pot here when you're playing wars and OPRs, and then your fourth consumable is your defensive consumable. Whether you're using the Oak Flesh Balms, whether you're using the Gemstone Dust, maybe you want to use the Fire Absorption Potions, or maybe you want to use the Arcane Absorption Potions. Those are currently your best defensive pots. I personally use just the gemstones when it comes to like OPRs and low scale stuff, but when it comes to wars, I'm always using either arcane or fire potions. I think those are the best right now. Now that we have somewhat of a decent understanding of the jewelry, weapons, armor, and consumables, let's very quickly touch up on the Heartrunes. You actually have three valid choices in my opinion when it comes to Heartrunes. First one being the brutal Heartrune of Detonate. This one's gonna give you the most damage, the most burst. It is the standard Heartrune you're gonna see most bruisers use. The second one that I think is decent but very slept on and a lot of people aren't using it is Vines. So what Vines give you is just lock people in place, right? Vines can be used, in my opinion, very well in this patch. Not a lot of people run them. And what you can also use is the Phantom Blades, the brand new Heartrune. And if you're going the Phantom Blades, you need to go the Cunning Phantom Blades, because when that hits an enemy, they cannot dodge, and that is great. Unless they hit you, then they can dodge. But those are your three options: Brutal Heartrune of Detonate, Brutal Heartrune of Vines, or Cunning Phantom Blades. I think those are your best options. Now let's go ahead and move over to the attributes. Another example of a little bit of a complex situation. Let's go ahead and use the food buff here just for demonstration purposes. I'm currently running 250 con, 318 strength. But in wars, I have a preset for 350 strength, then I have preset for 250 con, and then I have preset for 300 con. And the way you can do those presets, I will actually try to explain it right now. For example, this one would be Bruiser 250 con. So when I click equip here, I will be having 250 con and 318 strength. But let's say I want to have multiple examples. I'm gonna name this one Bruiser 350 strength. We're gonna save it, and what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna respec it to 350 strength, and we're gonna click assign, and most importantly, we're gonna go back into the gear sets and we're gonna click import attributes. So by doing one click of a button, I can now play 250 con 318 strength, and I can now play 350 strength and 200 con. And I think those are like the two nice spots. If you have more slots, I would also consider testing out the 300 con variant. I've been testing the 350 strength, 250 con, 300 con variants, and I've had the most fun on 250 con and 300 con. The 350 strength felt the most squishy and the most like punishable in a way. It also dealt good damage, but I genuinely think the sweet spot in Season 10 is going to be either 250 con or 300 con. The meta will have to evolve. You have to play it for yourself. It heavily depends what kind of gear you're rocking as well. If you have a beast gear, maybe you can push the strength higher. If you have a gear, maybe you need to push your con a little bit higher as well. So keep that in mind when it comes to attributes. Alright, now it is time to talk about the weapon mastery. By clicking K, going into weapon mastery, clicking on the grade X, we can see my grade X page, and then we're gonna take a look at my hammer page as well. So what's important with the grade X? We are taking all the good passives with 1 point in charge. So what does this mean? Everything down in Maelstrom, everything down in gravity well. We want crowded protection for the extra armor, we want center of attention to deal extra damage, we want grit on our heavy attacks, but not because of heavy attacks, but because we also get damage reduction while grit is active. This synergizes extremely well with the grit ring, and we want Mauler's Resolve, which is basically inbuilt stamina recovery. Moving on to the left side, we are not taking the haste even though we could. We are taking the light attacks with the Great Axe, give you Empower, armor penetration, a little bit of lifesteal, critical damage increase, 1 point in charge. Frustration is very nice to have when you're hitting anybody that can block your attacks, and then a little bit bonus damage, a little bit bonus critical chance when they're on low HP. In theory, you could maybe replace this with haste, but this is a pretty much bread and butter page for Bruisers. I don't think you're changing anything here. Everything else is pretty bad. Where you could change some things, however, is on your hammer. But there is one thing that I would not recommend you to take. And if you see a lot of people are playing the djinn head rep, these exhaustive attacks is kinda useless right now. In the past, I would maybe recommend taking this. However, this was my page that I've been using forever. And I am utilizing both acceleration and quick recovery. Some Bruisers don't do that, but a lot of the times I really like the idea of heavy attacking, light attacking, heavy attacking, light attacking, and when you're aiming towards a player, this actually moves you around the area a lot without you needing to use stamina. So that's what I personally like to do in order to reposition myself without wasting stamina, and it also gives me my cooldowns back faster. And yeah, I wouldn't change too much here. Couple of interesting perks that could be considered is the guarded sprint. I don't think you really want to take this though. Maybe the outnumbered here. Increasing the armor by 20% if surrounded by 2 or more enemies. So you could get rid of either acceleration or quick recovery and pick out the outnumbered. Everything else I wouldn't really change. I think this is gonna be your bread and butter when it comes to the normal Warring Bruiser page. And lastly, I want to touch about gear score. I think gear score is one of those things that a lot of people sleep out on. In OPRs, your gear score gets automatically pushed up to 775. So even if you're equipping pieces that are 730, 700, like low gear score, you will feel strong. As soon as you jump into a war scenario where your gear is not upscaled, you will feel hella weak. So what does this mean? You want to increase your amulets because they will give you higher protection. Right now I'm not doing that because I'm waiting if I find any sort of beast slots. But before every war, I'm using all of my gems onto my Bruiser gear in order to get as high gear score as possible. As you can see, this Great Axe is 800 gear score because I don't think I'll find a better Great Axe in a long time on this account. Djinn is on 800 gear score because I don't think I will be replacing it anytime soon. I'm probably pushing these legs and these boots all the way to like 780, 790 very soon, and whenever I get a full besting slot that I'm very confident about, I will push it to 800. You want to be as close to 800 gear score as possible in order to not only deal more damage, but also receive less damage. And the priority would be weapons, get that to 800 as fast as possible, artifacts, get that to 800 as fast as possible, amulets in order to get more protections, and then everything else. So for example, when I get Endless Thirst, I'm pushing it 800 immediately. When I get a Beast Hammer, I'm pushing it 800 immediately. Just so you get the idea. And that about covers it. Usually I would use this time in the video in order to talk about the spell rotations and things like that. We can do it very quickly. The usual combo on a Bruiser is we're just gonna imagine that we have a cleansing pot here. The way combos would work, your caller would call for a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 bomb. Before the 1, you want to be using your cleanse pot. In this case, let's imagine it's 4. You want to be making sure you're using all of your protections, like whether you have oak flesh or fire absorption or whatever, make sure that's going. And you want to be pre-serumed for sure before entering the bomb. On 1, you click your cleanse, you click your deto, you go crazy, you wait for the deto to explode, and then you can just charge out. Nowadays, it's so free because you have intangible charge, you can just charge through everybody. It's very easy to escape bombs in this patch. So the only thing countering the intangible charge in this patch is the ice gauntlet walls. So do not charge into an ice gauntlet wall. That is about it. I really don't have anything else to say here. Maybe an idea is to pre-stack your maulers. If you do not know, you can pre-stack your maulers fury damage by getting left clicks in, and then before you do your full combo, the game remembers your bonus damage. So you can left click a couple of times, do your usual combo, whether it's grab, shock, spin, whether it's just grab death or spin left clicks, whatever it is. If you want to see more Bruiser gameplay, we have a million VODs on the channel. You can join up on the stream almost every single day. We're playing some sort of a Bruiser war, and you can ask more questions there. But that was it. That was a pretty comprehensive, pretty long guide for a Bruiser, and I hope I covered all of the topics, and if I didn't, I will make sure to update things in the description as they evolve. We are still very early into the season 10, so as soon as the meta evolves or something changes, I will be doing an updated Bruiser guide if that is necessary. If not, I will be posting it in the pinned comment in the description, any sort of updates. And yeah, I really hope this was helpful, and if it was, give the video a like, maybe consider subscribing. We've reached 15,000 subs over here on the New World channel, very exciting. Let's see if we can reach 20,000 subs by the end of the year. I think it's possible. Let's make it happen, and I'll be back very soon with another video, and until then, have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.